Did Utah get robbed by the referees? We're breaking it down on today's show, as well as everything that happened with Mark Harlan following the conclusion of Utah's soul-crushing loss to BYU. We're talking about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, make sure you guys like and subscribe. You can do that on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review us. Love to interact with all of you in the YouTube comments. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by Elijah Grayson Murray of Athlon Sports. Elijah had the video of Mark Harlan after the game yesterday, so we'll have to get his thoughts and everything that happened with Mark Harlan, because there were notable things that happened even before then. But first, let's start with what's all the talk in the rage right now. And unfortunately, and I hate when this is the story of games like this, it's the officiating. The refs and the late calls that were incredibly frustrating, and what happened with Utah. We're going to talk about another call that I actually there was a call I thought was egregious. But let's say this, on did the refs rob Utah? Overall, I'm going to say no. I don't like to blame the officials. And honestly, was it a little ticky-tacky? Maybe. But it's hard because, look, at the end of the day, the receiver that Zemaiah Vaughn is on goes to make a move to the outside, and he stumbles because Zemaiah's arm and hand across his body, grabbing his shoulder pad. That's why he stumbles. We've seen several clear replay and reviews. I'd also ask all of you that are incredibly fired up to, for a moment, take your bias out of it. I know it's hard to do. And also, I'm sorry I'm not going on here right now telling you to hate everyone and fire everyone. That's not this kind of show. I'm not that kind of host. I apologize. If you want that, then I'm sure there are other avenues or places to get it. But when you look at this game, I think if you remove your bias and you say, if you were the ref on that play and you didn't have any skin in the game, I think it's understandable why you throw the flag there. Do I wish it wasn't thrown? Of course. And once again, was it maybe a little ticky-tacky? I could maybe argue so, but he does grab the shoulder pad. So we'll talk about some of the other calls in a moment, but I can't say that Utah got robbed, because when I watched that play, and I've watched it over and over from all the different angles, I can totally understand how in a split decision that call was made. And I'll also say this, speaking of did Utah get robbed? How about you score points in the second half and you still have the rest of the drive that you could have stopped them on? To me, Utah still lost this game with not being able to execute in key spots, more so than the officials just not giving them a call.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, I think the call was a bit soft, but I mean, it is what it is. It in the rule book, it should be called. And so that's how it is, and that's the way it panned out. I don't think you can blame the loss on that, and I think you can't say the refs robbed them. If anything, Utah's, disposition to play not to lose rather than play to win is what robbed them of this game. You can't go out in the first half playing free, playing, exciting offense, playing positive offense, putting up 3 touchdowns, which Utah hasn't done in the first half.
In Southern Utah, right?
Yeah, against Southern Utah, and that was it. And so, you can't change that going into the second half. And then credit to Jay Hill. I mean, you got to give him some credit. If he made adjustments to kind of curb that, then all credit to him. But I truly think that Utah just played not to lose, and you all you had to do was kick a field goal. All you had to do was score a touchdown, and you win the game. The defense played amazing, but even with the defense playing that so amazing, they're going to give up points when they're constantly on the field, and their offense is not backing up their end of the ball.
And they didn't, and that's where it's frustrating. Conservative playing at times, absolutely. And then also just misplays, right? Whether it's Brandon Rose missing a throw, Brandon Rose interception where him and Landon King were not on the same page. just situations in the running game where you can't execute consistently. The fact that when this team gets in third and long situations, outside of the anomaly that was the touchdown spurts that they had in a row early, that third and long doesn't work well for this team. And if you're a college football team and every time you're in third and long, you know it's more than likely going to be a punt, that's not ideal. And that's where it's frustrating. And yes, the defense gave up the late drive. That's where it's on them. But yet again, this loss to me falls more on the offense and their inability to score just some points in the second half. That's where it hurts. I mentioned Landon King because there actually was another call that I felt was more, I think there was a call that was more egregious than what the Zemaiah Vaughn one was. Landon King getting called for that holding penalty really irks me because to me, Zemaiah Vaughn's, he does hold and impede route. Like he impedes the guy from, I think it's a sluggo, impedes the guy from getting open, the receiver from trying to get to the outside there. The Landon King one, is his hand in a place it's not supposed to be? Yes, but that would be the same thing. Like the reason Zemaiah Vaughn's is a penalty is because his hand was in a place it wasn't supposed to be and he grabbed.
Right.
King doesn't really grab. His hand is just on the shoulder pad. To me, there's not a tug. There's not a grab there. I don't think that's a penalty. I think that should have been a first down for Utah. I don't think it should have been called. There's also an argument to be made, and I know Brant Kuithe got hurt, but Landon King, he's not the strongest blocker. So why in that spot too? And I see that as well. But like I said, I don't think that was a penalty on King. I don't think it should have been. I think he hit him. And yes, his hand should have been in, like you want two hands inside. That's what you want. But I don't feel like that was a flag. I thought that was even more ticky-tacky than the other one because Zemaiah Vaughn's actually did impede the receiver. Landon King's did not. So I did not like that penalty at all. That to me was more egregious because obviously that would have given Utah basically a chance to ice the game as it would have been first down Utah and the clock continuing to run.
Yeah. And, I think this game really was full of referee mistakes on both sides of the ball. BYU could argue that the Mekhi Bernard touchdown shouldn't have been a touchdown. There's ticky-tacky things on both sides. And, I do agree with you that the Landon King thing probably should not have been called. Again, it was another soft, calling the refs. And I don't know if the refs were just thinking that they had to be overly technical with everything, which, in a rivalry game shouldn't be the case anyway. You should let the boys play a little bit. But I think, even, and we said this in a bit earlier, I think no matter the penalties, no matter the missed calls, the bad calls, the good calls, this and that, whatever, you got to execute. And you can't run up the middle on the first, 2 downs to get 1 yard and then try and throw for 9 yards to get a first down. Like that's just not going to work. And it annoys me that Utah had the formula for success in the first half and then just completely threw it away for an offense that we've seen lose now 5 straight in a row.
I guess, but yeah, part of it is thrown away. But also part of it is just, give credit to BYU for making adjustments and Utah not executing. There were times Utah tried to push the ball downfield, result in interception, resulted in missed plays too. So that's where also this team just didn't execute. And that's what's tough to swallow once again. And because Utah didn't execute, Mark Harlan went on a huge rant post-game. He didn't even wait till he got to the podium to do some other notable things. Let's talk about everything that's happened with Mark Harlan, his actions. He released a statement after it. Elijah, you had the video, so we'll be discussing that. We're breaking it all down. We have a lot to discuss from the fallout of Utah's loss to BYU coming up in a moment. But first, want to talk with you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. Our episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet, and that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Another college football Saturday and an NFL Sunday is in the books, but those two sports still roll on. This Sunday, Utah's got Colorado. Buffs, 18th ranked in the country in the AP poll. They'll be higher than that in the top 25 poll, I believe. 10.5-point favorites for the Buffs currently. Not feeling great about that one right now for Utah, but we'll continue to monitor that line this week. And also, if you're over football season a little bit. You're probably not if you're watching this podcast, but if you say, hey, I'd rather check out the NFL and NHL, you can get it on all the latest live actions at FanDuel there. They got tons of great bets for you to cash in on today. Head over to FanDuel right now. All right, Elijah, as we continue to roll on and discuss this game, we have to talk about what happened after the game. And I want to talk about what happened with Mark Harlan even before he got to the press conference. But obviously the biggest thing making head waves is what happened with him in the press conference. So before he even stepped in front of the microphone, Elijah, take us from what happened from your standpoint. You were in the stadium and you saw him enter the press conference room. What happened?
You know, it really caught us all by surprise. We were all just kind of talking about the game and you know, what went wrong for Utah. You know, the people were in the room next to the press conference room getting ready to listen in because we were expecting Rose and Bernard to come in. And all of a sudden, you know, we hear the door open and then Harlan comes in, just storms right in. No warning, no anything. He just storms right in and starts talking, which is why the first part of the video between me and Barlow are cut off because he started talking before we could even, you know, recoup and figure out what was going on. And so everyone's scrambling to get their phone on the table to get his audio. And, you know, I just start recording and then, you know, he starts to go in on the Big 12 and you know, says what he says and you know, it's not long. It's like a 30-second thing and then he just leaves. He just says thank you and leaves. And then after that, everyone's just like, what in the world just happened? That's the most unexpected thing, you know, possible. And I mean, obviously we were all happy for it because content. But
you're not wrong.
Yeah, but I think and another thing, after, and this is a kind of a cool little, or not cool little detail, but a little detail, the people watching, like the fans watching in the room next to the press conference room, once Harlan left, they all started clapping for him. And so it's like, you know, I
get that.
And I know you have your thoughts on how he went about everything. But it definitely, it's something that I don't think any of us ever expected to experience, especially from an athletic director. Me personally, I think in a way, his feelings are right because it is a soft penalty from, you know, whichever way you're looking at it. I mean, it should, you know, called or not called, it's still relatively soft. But I think the way he went about it was a bit not athletic director like. And I think that is kind of what caught everyone off guard and why the video has gone so viral because, you know, that's so out of the norm. And obviously he got repercussions from the Big 12 or whatever, but it was definitely crazy. And I'll remember that for a long time.
Unfortunately, I think we all will. And I totally get, you mentioned those fans clapping at the press conference. I totally get that sentiment of he stuck up for us.
Right.
Go, Mark, go. I get that sentiment. I want to give my thoughts in a moment. First, I would like to read Mark Harlan's statement, though, that he did put out talking about all of this. Here's the statement he released earlier today, and Mark Harlan was fined $40,000 for his actions during yesterday's, or just the comments, actually, which there were some interesting actions he had to. Last night, following our game against BYU, this is the statement from Mark Harlan, I made clear my feelings related to the officiating. However, I recognize that there are more appropriate times and avenues to express those concerns. I accept the consequences of my decisions. My comments came after having just left our team locker room where our student athletes were hurting and upset. The University of Utah is proud to be a member of the Big 12 Conference, and we look forward to working with our peers to continue to enhance the league. BYU coach Sitake and their coaches and student athletes are having a terrific season, and we wish them the very best. Okay, that's what Mark said. Here's what I'm going to say. And there's probably some of you that listen, and you listen a lot, so you've heard me say this a lot. I was a former intern inside the University of Utah athletic department, and I didn't really cross paths with Mark Harlan ever. Only once or twice. Was always very kind to me. And look, though, this is what our job as we do this is to call things as we see them. I think it was a bad look. Everything really that happened with Mark Harlan, starting with first and foremost, as soon as the game ended and I'm watching it, I see Mark Harlan trying to get after the refs on the field while the ref is trying to talk about the game being over. Come to find out after the game that sideline flag warning, whatever it was on Mark Harlan for coming on the field during the play. And there are now images that show that. If you are an athletic director, I mean, look, and I'm not saying I'm an athletic director, but you just can't make yourself the story. You can't let the emotions get the best of you as the leader of this athletic program in that situation. You cannot go after a ref like that. I don't think it's a good look when the head of your athletic department lets his frustrations out that much. I don't think it's a good look when you're coming on the field during a play. Mark Harlan made himself part of this story, and that is not what you are supposed to do as an athletic director. Look, I think that's how it is. And there's a reason this is unprecedented for an athletic director. Also, I think the statement, the fact that he did not apologize for his comments saying he's not happy to be a part of the Big 12, I think that's a miss. I think he should have apologized and walked that comment back, especially because we also heard after the game, I think it was Jake Hatch who put this out. One of the Big 12 refs was a former Pac-12 official. So that's where I just think it's a bad look again. And I think that I understand he was frustrated after the game, but I think there are other ways to express those frustrations, as he said. And even after he did express those frustrations, I think not apologizing for the actions, especially the ones that include taking a dump on the conference that, look, I know we're frustrated by the way this season has gone. And a lot of us, many people are still frustrated at the Pac-12 breaking up. I haven't enjoyed this season, obviously, but I think I've enjoyed a lot about being in the Big 12. I think it's been fun to build these new rivalries. It's been fun to see the new stadiums and the atmospheres and the venues. So to then talk about how we don't like the Big 12 right now and we're not happy with that, I think is a bad look. And also, as we said, there were several plays made for Utah to still win this game. So to act like it still just came down for that, you can see a clear grab on the pass interference one. So that's where even if I didn't, I wish they had swallowed it there and let him play a little more. It still is a penalty. And it was, if that had happened, if we reverse it and that happens to BYU, we're Utah, we're screaming for that flag right there because he grabs it. And I think that's the reality of the situation. So I totally get Mark Harlan's frustrations. He's just fighting for his team. He's fighting for his guys. But I do not think it's a good look for the university. I'm not a fan of people calling for his jobs. I think he made a mistake, a bad mistake, and one that he was fined for. But look, it's not a good look for the University of Utah, I don't think. And I'm very curious to see, well, it's something we won't know, right? Like, how does the Big 12, they find him, but how does the rest of the Big 12 perceive what happened with Mark Harlan, the refs, all the things that he said? Very interesting outcomes that we'll find out. Well, we won't find out, but I'm just curious to see if there is any more fallout to come from his outbursts after the game.
Yeah, and one fallout that I am interested to see is that game had, if I'm not mistaken, around 70 recruits visiting.
Oh gosh, that's right.
And
don't remind us all of that. Oh gosh, they saw that.
So that is going to be interesting to see the fallout of that, because Utah obviously has not had the best time in recruiting this season, and so depending on. This whole situation could shape the trajectory of Utah's recruiting for 2025 and 2026.
Well, really quick, Elijah, just you talk about recruiting. This is a painful reality, but one I talked about a little bit last week, and now is absolutely the case. The best college football program in the state of Utah is BYU right now. That you could make an argument if Utah had won the game yesterday that, hey, BYU is a better team this year, but this is just a down year for us. Even in a down year, we still got those guys. We're the better program.
Right.
Not right now. BYU, undefeated. You can say all you want about the Cougars, they're frauds, this and that. They keep finding ways to win. You know who doesn't keep finding ways to win? The University of Utah. So that's where you got to give BYU credit. And right now, they can go to recruits and say, hey, we are the best football program in the state of Utah. We're trending upwards. And no matter what happens with Kyle Whittingham, who transfers, who doesn't, it doesn't matter. Utah's not trending in a good direction right now.
Right, and it also helps that they have the Nike sponsorship as opposed to Under Armour. But
I like the Under Armour stuff. I know people get on that all the time.
I like the Under Armour stuff too. I think we need a little bit of an update, but I think the Under Armour, especially like with the painted helmets and stuff, I think that's pretty cool. But no, you got to give credit to BYU. You can pull up their luck rating numbers all you want and stuff, but a win is a win. It is actually a thing.
It's actually a thing, a luck rating.
Yeah, a luck.
I've never heard of that. Utah's gotten a lot of unlucky again this season, so I know Utah is going to be high.
Yeah, I know. I've seen people argue that like BYU's luck rating is 1 point above everyone else's in the college football, and it's just like, guys, you find if your team was in BYU situation, you would not be complaining one bit. A win is a win. And that's all that matters. So you got to give credit where credit is due. Sure, you have some questionable calls. Sure, you have some games that probably should have gone another way, but they didn't. The way they win is the way they went. And it's more of like you just got to look at your own team and be like, why didn't we win that game more so than how did BYU win that game?
You have to look in the mirror. And one person who did that in part, in some ways didn't, Kyle Whittingham. I thought he was justified in being frustrated at the end of the game. The point was a little excessive at the official, but look, he was hot in the moment. And if any of you are listening to this point in the podcast, you probably know this, but Kyle Whittingham did obviously hug Kalani Sitake. It wasn't like he dodged Sitake in the heat of the moment there. I did not like that was going around that, oh, Whitt did this to Sitake. He absolutely did. That's where you got to be careful about passing judgment before you see what happens. I know we just passed a bunch of judgment on Mark Harlan, but that's a little different in unprecedented times. And I mean, you guys can tell me, find me the last time you had a coach an athletic director who you could see chewing out a ref or an official on the field after a game had ended, or in a press conference, not just talks about the officiating being bad and being robbed. I feel like I've heard that one point or another about the athletic director commenting on bad officiating, but saying we're not happy to be in the conference right now because of this. That is a wild statement to make, and one that maybe we'll see more of in the new world of college athletics, but it's just uncharted territory right now. It's a wild time to be a college football fan and a very wild time to follow the University of Utah amidst these continued struggles. 5 losses in a row. Still can't believe it when I say it. And even though Utah continues to lose, something that is evident is Kyle Whittingham still has that fire. I want to talk about something very interesting that I noticed at the end of the game, and something else that was pointed out by someone on X I saw. I want to break that down in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Note, Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There are so many fantastic ways you can get involved and get to the game, and that is with Game Time, because Game Time gives you game picks, curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, and theater events near you. There's also that tagline, that feature that shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. If you guys want to distract yourself from Utah's season with a concert, a comedy, go to a theater, that's where Game Time has you covered too. Or if you're hungry for more football, Game Time has your back. You can get a panoramic view from your seat, which is something I love, so you know exactly what your view will look like when you make your purchase. Game Time will also credit you 110% of the difference with their low price guarantee. Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, capital L for locked, O for on, and C for college for $20 off. And that is LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Again, terms do apply, and that's capital L for locked, O for on, and C for college. Everything else lowercase, and it is all one word for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Although whenever I hear Game Time for the University of Utah right now, I get panic. I get panic and dread at the moment. Anyways, appreciate all of you still listening. Continue to support the show. Really good day for the show yesterday, by the way, as Elijah could attest to as well. We both had. You mentioned content, Elijah. So I know I speak for Elijah in this. We appreciate all of you who continue to view and support our work, even when the season isn't going to plan. Speaking of the season not going to plan, Kyle Whittingham, very frustrated. And Elijah, this is another one. Walk me through the post-game press conference and just what you saw from Whittingham. I don't know how much you can see. Well, I've been in the press box, but you're obviously very far, so I don't know how much you can really monitor what he's doing from the sideline. But talk to me about everything you saw from Kyle Whittingham today and just his actions and emotions after the loss.
So it was hard to see really what happened, as the game ended, because when 6 minutes are left in the game, we go down on the field, sit in the south end zone, and watch the rest of the game before heading into the press room. And so I didn't really see anything straight after the game. I did see that he did hug BYU's coach. So
yes, he did.
That was put to rest any of that, which is good. I think that is necessary. And I think, despite it being a rivalry, you still have to show,
Well, and they have such a history together, too.
Right,
so
exactly.
Kalani, I'm a huge Kalani fan, by the way. I think, it's BYU. We don't like those guys. But, I really like Kalani. And honestly, there's part of me that can admire, just a team from a state of Utah put together of players from a Utah high school football, all these good players coming together for BYU. Yes, obviously I want to beat BYU, but it is a special season they're happening. And Kalani Sitake is a really good guy. There were questions about his job security after the season if they underwhelmed again. He even said when he hugged Kyle Whittingham, love you. And that's a genuine thing. So that is where I am happy for Kalani. And it is cool that him and Whitt still have that strong relationship.
Right, 100%. And, this being my first real Holy War to experience, because 2021 was my freshman year, and how that happened.
I experienced 2021. Let's not talk about it anymore.
Yeah. And so, so after obviously Harlan, and then after Smith Snowden and Brandon Rose, actually, let me give a quick shout out to them, because they were very sportsman.
Yes, they were.
And they were very professional. I especially Snowden, he really was just keep your head up and push forward. You can't do anything about it. And so that was great. And then obviously Whitt comes in. He's definitely on fire. He's fired up, but in like a not in a Mark Harlan way, more of like in a Coach Whitt way, fired up.
Yes.
And so I think that alone is a good sign. We don't know if obviously he'll be the coach for Utah after the season, but that's still to be determined. But I think it's good to see that he still has that passion despite how the season has gone. And it wasn't necessarily a great press conference, because obviously we found out Brant Kuithe is out for the year.
Yeah.
And that was a tough thing to hear, especially with how hard he fought to get back on the field at the beginning of this year. And he definitely was not. He was in unison with Harlan in regards to the call was soft, and that the call shouldn't have been called. And I mean, again, as a head coach, right after the game, that's what you're gonna think, and that's what you're gonna observe, because you feel like you got robbed out the win. But I think we'll get a better image of what Whittingham thinks of what happened tomorrow or Monday, or whenever the day it'll drop on Monday.
It'll drop tomorrow.
Yes. So today, and then that'll kind of see where things are. But I think just the whole thing was so crazy. It was such a blur, and everything happened so fast. Like, that press conference was the shortest post-game one that we've had this season, despite how many of the bad losses we've had. And so I credit him for keeping it cool as much as he could. The chair at the end.
Don't ask the chair. Don't ask the chair.
He kind of at the end he kind of made a little statement, but at least at the start, he was able to, I guess, harness his emotions enough to not, disparage, BYU or the conference, which I think is pretty admirable.
Yep, I agree with that. For those of you who didn't see it, Kyle Whittingham was asked about the end of the game, and he said the thing that caused his exiting frustration was he talked about the defense played well but couldn't get that last stop when we needed. It's kind of the story of the season, and then he absolutely tossed a chair to the side after. It wasn't like he picked it up and threw it, but just very much so flipped it to knock it over in frustration. And I thought that was interesting. But you know what else I thought was interesting? A point that friend of the show and the host of Locked On BYU Cougs, Jake Hatch, said. This is what Jake said on his X account. I saw passion in this moment. That tells me Kyle Whittingham may not be ready to hang it up. He's still got that. We don't lose to BYU fire in his belly. I wonder what his future holds now more than ever. That is a fantastic point by Jake. We've talked about a lot on the show. What does Kyle Whittingham's future hold? Originally it was let's ride off into the sunset with a great year. This year has been anything but great. And I think Kyle would have loved to do that as well. But now this year didn't go great. Is this how you want to exit? Kyle still clearly has the passion. He still gets fired up after these games. And does he want another crack at BYU and the entire Big 12? I think, as Jake noted, yesterday could absolutely be an example of he might actually come back. And I know there's been lots of rumors and reports and everything flying around about what will happen. But look, Kyle Whittingham is a legend. And there are a lot of reasons that things have gone awry for Utah. There are still, as long as Kyle Whittingham wants to be the coach of this team, unless it really and it's bad this year, but if it's bad year after year, there are things to blame on this year, the injuries again, and other just, games not going your way. Utah hasn't made the plays. They have issues on offense. Kyle Whittingham, if he still as long as he wants to be the coach at Utah, barring another just catastrophic season, I think he should deserve to be. So if he wants to come back, and he very well might, like Jake said, that passion yesterday, that fire, that's real. I don't think we can completely sign it and say Kyle Whittingham is done being the coach of this team. I've said for a while, originally, I thought this would be his last year, but ever since the season hasn't gone to path, I genuinely don't know what the future holds for him, Elijah. And I think examples of yesterday could be why he wants to run it back.
Yeah. And, I wouldn't blame him if he wants to, because he is such a storied head coach. He is one of the most underrated head coaches in college football. He is one of the best head coaches in college football. And he has, kept this program relevant for 20 plus years, despite not having, the facilities of like an Ohio State, and, not having the recruiting ability as a Georgia or whatever. He's kept the program in a great spot. And especially in recent years, since I've been going to the university, Utah football has been in an incredible spot, and so I'm very lucky to have been able to witness 2021 and 2022. And I think, while I understand people would be saying that it's time for Kyle to hang it up and for a completely new staff, and, with Scally at the head to come in and get new voices, revamp everything. I think if Whitt wants to come back, if he truly believes that, Utah can be better, Utah can beat BYU, Utah can, be the team that everyone expected them to be this year, and whether you achieve that by the transfer portal or by recruiting or whatever, I think you have to let him try. You can't not. And I think if he did come back, I don't think anyone would be mad, because
there would be some people that were mad, but I think most people still realize this is Kyle Whittingham. Like, as much as people think fire Kyle Whittingham, it gets better, that isn't always the case. Maybe Morgan will be great. I think he's going to be really good. Right. Morgan is a tall task to live up to what Kyle's done for this team.
Yes, 100%. And I think being under Whittingham for so long, I think he will carry that, over very well. The culture is a big thing. And I think, just you gotta get some things right. This is a first year in a new conference. Everything changed. Yeah. And if you have Rising, you could argue that Utah or BYU spot.
I think Utah wins the game yesterday. People got mad at me for saying it, but I think if you look at how the game played out, if Cam Rising was healthy, that Utah wins that game. I don't really think that's a question to me.
Right. And you can't blame the team for the injuries and the unexpected circumstances. You can blame them for not fixing the problems over the course of multiple weeks. And I think that is something that does need to be addressed in the offseason. But that's why you have an offseason, to fix these issues. And every team is going to have a down season from time to time. Every program they're not going to be constantly on a high. And so, use this year as a learning year. If Kyle wants to run it back next year, let him run it back. And then let's get back to Utah football that we know and love.
Let's get back to Utah football we know and love, indeed, Elijah. And Utah's got a tough test against the Buffaloes, but still a lot to happen before we even get to that point. Elijah, if people want to keep up with the latest that goes on with Utah football, where should they head over to?
You can follow me on my Twitter at Elijah G. Murray. That's where I post all post-game interviews. That's where I post all practice interviews, and I also repost all my articles there. So you can keep up to date with all Utah football. And then once that season is over, we'll move over to basketball and women's basketball. And so it'll be a constant flow of Utah athletic news, and you can follow me there for it all.
Last thing before we leave. Please, Utah fans, do not get mad at BYU for Brant Kuithe's injury. It was just, we've seen multiple angles of it. That was Brant just took a bad fall there, and it's unfortunate injury luck that continues to plague this team, but that was not a dirty play by BYU. So that was the last thing I wanted to leave off with. And I know it was a long and frustrating weekend, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with this team next and moving forward. Elijah, always great having you on. Thank you so much for all you do on this show, as well as all the videos. I know Utah fans appreciate it greatly.
Thank you. Anytime. I appreciate it.
That's going to do it for Locked On Utes. A lot to talk about. As Elijah said, we're going to hear from Coach Whitt and the players tomorrow. What do they think about everything that happened? And we got a game to preview this week too. Still so much to discuss on Locked On Utes. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow.